Much. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, my name is Werner Klomfar. I'm from Vienna, and Specific Group is a software company which is doing software development for banks, insurance companies, and other service companies. And we are working with our Belarusian development department now for more than 10 years. Within my presentation, I would like to give you a short introduction about what Specific Group is doing, why are we doing this speech here today, why we think software development for banks might be a little bit different, some things about security and what we think what could be the future. So now maybe you might think, why is someone coming here and telling you in an agile conference why things can be not agile? But it's not like I don't want to tell you about what is not agile. I want to tell you why not everything within working for banks and financial institutions always could be agile. So maybe someone of think might now think, oh, it could become boring because he's talking about only facts and figures and numbers, but I will do my very best to do it not boring. I will do my best to show it that it could be very interesting working in this area where we are. Let's have a short talk about our company. Myself started working with people here in Belarus on the software development in the late 90s, and over the last 15 to almost 20 years, we built up a company with departments in Austria, in Slovakia, in Germany, in the US, and we have 2 development departments here in Belarus. Meanwhile, we have more than 200 people working within this group, either fixed employees or strategically software development partners. And the main areas where we are working is this financial industry, where we're delivering projects as well as services, but also what we call a strategic skill management, means having people at the right place to do projects for our customers. We are working for a lot of international banks like UniCredit Group or Sberbank or Raiffeisen, but also a lot of local banks in Austria and Germany. We're also working for companies who are doing software development for banks and also for fintechs in order to support them with their development on their products. So now coming to the main point, why do we think software development for banks might work different, and why is the agile approach not always possible in this area? When you look at this, you might think, oh, confusing. This is the typically landscape when we go into banks and when we talk about them. What does it mean to work with your application? What does it mean to work within your landscape, within your infrastructure environment? And then you immediately recognize that you have to talk to so many people, to so many departments, to maybe also different companies, different consultants. And then you have to bring them all into one team, into one big project, and find a way that they all can somehow cooperate together. And then the deeper you go into the systems, the deeper you go into the infrastructure, you recognize there are more and more things, more and more departments. Look, this is, for example, the communication infrastructure of one single system we are operating for one multinational bank. And we are operating here with more than 70 different backend systems and more than 240 different connections. And everything has to work on a 7x24, and you have to process millions of transactions. You have to take the responsibility. And every time you make a change request or you plan something, you have to do this in the way that you ensure that the stability and the availability of the systems is not affected. Having teams working on such an environment means that they have to be aware about their responsibility and about what they are doing, and they have to be clear that everything they do, everything they decide has a direct impact on what happens by the end. In our activities, we are working in different areas for our customers. So we are developing solutions, we are doing system integrations, but we are also doing business support. So this means we are in the value chain from the very beginning to the very end. And within this work and within these projects we are doing, we always try to bring in an agile approach. But as I will show you in a later point of time, this is not always possible this easily. Yeah? From the areas we are working in within payment and trade and reporting, you can see there are a lot of different projects and topics and issues we are working with, but this is not the point for my presentation, so we don't want to go into these details. I just want to show what Specific Group did out of what we are doing for more than 15 years for our customers. So within specific group, we used the agile approach to develop some tool sets, some frameworks which we can use for our customers to have a stable base, to have a good base for the implementation for our projects, and to have the possibilities within our teams to allow them to work in an agile methodology and to use these benefits we can have out of this. Yeah? So we try to somehow decouple from the classical streamlined processes which are working within our customers to our internal procedures, to our internal methodologies, to have the possibility to use the agile approach and to also have the possibility for the development for our people. On the right side, we have our open message framework, which is something we are using in our projects. And here on the left side, we have a lot of different important topics which we are building based on our framework to implement the solutions for our customers. So what is it now, why we think software development for banks is different? When you imagine that you're working on systems which are so-called business critical, everything you do always have a direct impact. So you can imagine that sometimes you do a mistake, but you maybe do it only once. It is clear that systems which are operated in the 7x24 environment, they have to be available all the time, and it must be somehow avoided that it can become to an outage or that problems come. Within the banks, we have more and more compliance and we have more and more regulatory issues and also accessibility. When you're working with companies from the CEE sector, it's not so easy to integrate them within environments, to have the access to the data, to make sure about data security. So we are also facing a lot of issues with the team integration, with the access to the system, with the compliance topic. And then we have the fact that for sure everybody wants to be flexible and everybody wants to have flexibility, but you also have to make sure that security is always ensured and people are aware of what they are doing. So this topic, security comes first, is one of our main topics. Finally, banks are changing quite a lot. They are no longer just an institution which is moving money from one account to another account. They're becoming more and more real complex IT organizations. With all the new requirements and all the new products and topics like instant payments, where we want to move money within seconds from one account to another account, cross-border in the worst case, it's all about IT and it's all about system integration that they can work together. And finally, when I started working for banks more than 15 years ago, I would say budget was not always the first topic we were discussing it, but this changed quite a lot over the last years, and meanwhile it's also there that budget and time is very limited, and we also have to make sure that we can deliver the according solutions within the budget. So also here we always have limitations to think about these agile methods and the flexibility. When we look at the classical structures, when projects are implemented, where we have the definition of the requirements, the design of the architecture, the planning of the interfaces, then doing the implementation, going into the testing and the integration test, finally have the acceptance deployed, and then start the next cycle. So this is the classical way banks typically work still today. They have so large infrastructures, they have so much grown environments, and you have to work with existing systems. You cannot start with everything from the scratch, so you have to fit into these details. Also, you have a lot of topics which are done on a certain point of time. You have rule books, you have regulatory changes, you have updates which have to be done at a certain date, you have updates which have to be done in conjunction with a second system. So it's not like you can just do it and when you're ready you just deliver it. You really have to come to the point where you need it. So the classical agile methods, like you build a backlog, you do a prioritization, you know that you have increased testing times and lead times, which brings additional efforts to the project, and especially when we work with our colleagues here in Belarus, that we know we have higher communication efforts. This is not so easy to just put it all into this project because, as I said before, we have this fixed budget and timelines, and we have these deadlines where we have to deliver something. We have to integrate with other systems, we have to follow the compliance, and we have to make sure that in the infrastructure everything works as it is expected. In order to achieve this, we tried to decouple the development and the implementation from the delivery. So we have a clear phase at the very beginning when demands are designed, when the specifications are clarified, and when it comes to the budget design and when it comes to the definition that we finally can start. So we define this in the start phase and the planning phase, which follows a clear structured approach. And then when it comes to the implementation, our teams become independent. So we define with our customers a set of features, a set of demands which can be implemented. And within this implementation, within our integration tests, within all the technical parts, our teams work in a kind of a self-organized environment where they can do their prioritization. They can define where are the relationships between the demands, what has to be done first, what has to be delivered together. And then finally it goes back to the bank and gives them the possibility for user acceptance tests and tell us at some point of time, okay, we can put it on a pre-prod environment, and there we have then the things ready to be delivered. So what we are doing here, we are moving away from a linear development where whatever is delivered also goes first to a production environment. We are doing the development decoupled from what the bank is doing, and at some point of time, we deliver it to the bank, we do the handover, and they can decide whenever they want to have something in production. And when it finally comes to a go live, when finally something is moved to the production environment, we still go back to a linear workflow because we have to fulfill all the quality gates, the compliance regulations, the regression tests, the documentation, and make sure that when there are some audits later on, we can deliver all the necessary information. So within these 3 steps, we have in the first step and in the last step, we have a very linear workflow, and only within the middle step, we have the possibility to apply our agile methods and to follow the agile approach. So here we have these 5 steps, which we normally have in a project. And from our point of view, we see that only in the middle step where we have the possibility to apply the agile methods, and here our teams can really use the benefits out of this flexibility to have this independence of the work they are doing. An important topic why we think that you have to be careful where you use pure agile methods and where you come back to classical methods is because working for a financial institution also means a lot about security. Security we grouped in 4 different levels. The one thing is about infrastructure and procedures, as I said before. You have to follow very strict rules and very strict regulations when you work in the finance area. It's not just like you do some piece of software development and you deliver it, and later on when there is a problem, you just fix it. When you are in this area, you have to be aware that every bug, every problem which is in the software, this causes a real impact on money. And when it's about money, it's not a lot about fun. You have to be aware that everything is meanwhile under regulation, everything is under control, there are a lot of audits, there are a lot of reviews, and there is no one who takes over responsibility and says, hey, it was me, I did this. Yeah? It's always you who will be guilty and never someone from the customer. So this is also important that our people who are working in these teams, they are aware that they have a big responsibility and what they are doing always has a big impact on the results and what will be our future. In the second topic, this is what I wanted to say before, it's about people and skills. Yeah? We have a very strong selection and we have a very good training and build-up for the people who are working in our finance project, that they are really aware what does it mean and what is the responsibility within their projects. We have a strong focus on seniors and experts, and we give our people the possibility to really grow with the project and develop and to get into these different areas. So this is one of the big benefits in the banking area. It's not just doing one business for the next 3 to 5 years. There are a lot of different topics. You can go from the payment area to the compliance area to the anti-money laundering. You can go to the trade area. So this offers a wide variety of different possibilities, but there is always this kind of stability, and the projects are in a different size like in other areas. So we think that especially the banking area in the current situation has a big potential of change because of the pressure which comes from outside. Finally, what I mentioned before, it's the topic about the releasing. We have a lot of different projects working for a number of different banks, and I can tell you There are no two projects which work like the same when it comes to delivery and when it comes to deployment. Every bank, every customer, they have their own definitions, they have their own structures, they have their own systems. So you always have to be aware that you set up the according continuous deployment systems, that you have the regression testers, you have the documentation, that you have the integration with your customers. So even with our agile process within the development, where we have weekly or bi-weekly deliveries to the customers, finally it means at some point of time you have to find a way to make your builds, to put it together that you can deliver something on a production environment which is not broken, which works consistent, which is really the next version of what you have previously on your production environment, and that you can ensure the continuous operation on your production environment. And this is what we think it's the important topic. It's about quality. Quality starts from the very beginning, when writing the first specification, when doing the requirement analysis, when doing the implementation, when doing your code scans, when doing your documentation, that everybody is aware the quality we have to deliver is the base for what we do in the future. And also we know from time to time there are mistakes, then we have to be clear that we have to fix these mistakes immediately, we have to be able to resolve the problems, we have to be able to be available. So this means also when you have a go live and this works on a Saturday or on a Sunday, Monday morning is always the most critical time, and you hope that everybody is back from the go live party. And this is what we build, and this is on what we built the base. When I started 15 years ago, our company was with about 5 people, and we started working on these projects. And based on what we did, meanwhile, we are more than 200 people working on 6 different locations all over the world. And so this shows that whatever you do, our people are focused on what we deliver is the best what we can do for our customers, and we want to do this in the most efficient way. How do we see the future in this area, and how do we see the possibilities in this banking area where we are working for? We see that this new kind of financial companies, the so-called fintechs, they put a big pressure on our customers, they put a pressure on the banks, but we think they will never replace the banks. These fintechs, they can focus on single services, they can do something, they can invent something. For example, only yesterday I read an article about an Austrian company which was started a couple of months ago. They developed a service of calculating a forecast of your bank account. But how can they do this? They can introduce a methodology, they can introduce some calculation, but without the data from your bank account, they can do nothing. So this means these fintechs, they need the banks, and on the other hand, the banks might need the fintechs to add additional services to these customers. And here we see the big benefit and the big difference. The fintechs, they can work agile. They have their ideas, they have their technologies, they can use agile methodologies to develop their services, but then it comes to the point where they have to integrate with the banks to build an end-to-end service and to give the customers whatever they want to have. And one of my colleagues made me a short collection of what kind of fintechs we can find there, and I think this is just a really small exclusion. So there are a lot of different services, a lot of different vendors who want to do something, but by the end, it's all about integration, it's all about cooperation. And this is what we think is also a good benefit, where we as a solution provider, as a system integrator, we can help them. Because with our experience out of the last years, we have the possibility to bring in the stability and make sure that finally the integration and the operation of these systems work in a good way. So to sum up, what we think software development for banks is, we think it's a really interesting area which offers a wide possibility for personal development, for technical development, and a lot of new challenges, a lot of opportunities, a lot of possibilities that people who start on one area can grow within the company, they can develop, and they can come to really seniors, to experts in some different sections, and then also go from the business analysis into the consulting, into the business support. We know that this environment will change, we know that there will be new requirements, and we know that also the classical banks are trying to approach the new agile methodologies. But we also have to imagine that they have development departments with hundreds or even thousands of people when you go to the big banks, and doing there the change in the mind and bringing them to new methodologies is always not as easy. And then finally, you also always have to understand that there is the big workflow from the very beginning, the specification over the implementation until they go live. And doing this all in an agile approach will still take some years to bring this in. With our customers, we always approach very long-term relationships. So this means we can grow with them and they can grow with us. And this also helps us to transport these new ideas. We try to integrate them in our systems, in our Jira, in our Confluence, to have also the communication on an agile way and have everything on the same level. Personal development is very important for our people, and this is what we also want to have with our employers, that they stay for a very long time with us and that they grow with us. Finally, we think it's not just developing some piece of software, it's more or less delivering a solution and doing this from the very beginning to the very end. In the Game of Thrones world, there is this winter is here. We decided to call it fintechs are here. We think with these fintechs we have a big chance, a big opportunity how we can develop and how we can use also these agile methods in our project. This is what I wanted to say here. The agile methods, this is what we want to use. We think that this is a good way to implement software, to give the customer fast feedback and to give them the possibilities for early testing and having these review cycles and doing this continuous development. And wherever it is possible within our projects, we really want to use this, and we are doing this now for quite many years. And I think the success we had over the last years was really something which showed us that it is possible, but the message which I wanted to bring here today was it's not possible over the whole value chain. Yeah, you always have to be careful where you can apply really agile methods and where you have to go back to classical methods and to structure your project in the way that your customer can follow you and come with you. So I hope it was not only boring, I hope there was also a lot of interesting information for you. If you have some more questions, either now or afterwards, I will not leave immediately. I would be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Werner. Perfect timing.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we've got pretty much time for questions, which is nice, finally. So raise your hand if you got a question. I will give you the mic. Okay, Marco?
Thank you. I'd like to continue from fintech area. I've been working also with one of the banks recently as a management consultant, and we've tried helping them rethink their strategy and do different things. And I guess that one of the things that I've found fascinating with talking with these senior executives, some of them are pretty open to the new ideas, and they say that already in 5 years, some of the retail offices essentially will become personless retail offices. So because you don't need any more, you can automate everything which is happening at the bank office. The second thing is exactly the appearance of fintechs that are changing the way payments are carried out, transactions, investment, any other functions that are also happening. And disruption is in the air. So the use of big data can also replace many functions in conventional banks as they are. So the discussions really are ongoing that, well, now we are a bank which has 5,000 employees, but maybe in 5 years we are only going to need 10 persons to run the whole place. So it looks like banks are at the crossroads from many angles. So how has been your discussion with the managers, and what is your reflection on that? Sorry for a long introduction.
No, this is fine. Thank you very much. The topic is, what we see here is that finally you always need this basic infrastructure to do all this money transport and the clearing and whatever, but this infrastructure is now challenged by new requirements. On one hand, we have instant payment. This is something which will come up. Yeah, everybody knows PayPal. They can support it. In 1 second, you can transfer money from one account to another account. But they have the benefit they are working in one system. But when you're talking about banks, when you're talking about international banks, when you're talking about cross-border transactions, it becomes much, much more complex. So from the point of view how we see this, we are sure that this basic infrastructure, that the basic services which are bank operating today, which normally no one here knows because this is the back end, yeah, you're not affected by this, yeah. You want to access your bank account and you want to transfer money. This infrastructure, this will always remain. And then it's the question how either some of the large banks, they can adapt to the new requirements, they can bring out these new services, but not every bank has the money and the power to develop all these services, and you don't need 10 providers who offer you instant payments, yeah. There is Apple Pay and who else, yeah? So there will be also some large vendors of doing something, and then they will have to integrate with the other banks because you want to transfer money from a very small bank to a very large bank, and this has to work smoothly. So I totally agree with you. The banks have to change. They have recognized that they have to change, but for them, it's also not so easy to do this change within this very fast way they would have to. They have their people, they have their structures, they have their departments. And what we learned, especially over the last 12 to 18 months, especially in Europe, these compliance and regulatory topics, they become more and more an issue to them. They cannot just change something and bring it to production within the next 3 months. You always have to involve compliance, you have to get the okay, and we learned it really that even customer demands have been cancelled because of a compliance issue. So no one is any longer doing a decision without having the safety, nothing can happen. And this is a big important topic in the projects. Okay?
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alexander. And what do you think about German Gref's speech? Maybe half a year ago, he said that Sberbank will be fully agile bank as soon as possible.
Honestly speaking, I don't know this speech, but I know the approach. I read a lot about what Sberbank is doing at the moment, also with integrating new technologies and building solutions with in-memory grid and special caching solutions to raise their peak processing technologies. I think it's a good idea that someone says, okay, we will move the structure, we will apply this, and we will become an agile bank. But finally, there will be always one part in this bank which have to follow classical infrastructure. They have to follow the ways, they have to follow their quality gates. So within the bank, within the development departments, I think this mind change can happen. They can move to agile methodologies, but finally there will be some cut, and then when it comes to delivery, you have to follow the classical structures. It will not come until the very end.
Okay, do we have any questions? Okay, cool.
Again, expanding on the fintech topic, can you provide maybe a concrete example, perhaps, of projects you've undertaken of integrating this classical structure, those heavily regulated processes, business processes, with some innovations, maybe now peer-to-peer lending, as you said, mobile payments, and so on. Maybe some concrete example of something that you did already.
An example which we could give here, for example, is all the results which will come out of the Payment Service Directive 2, which is currently under review and which will come with the end of, I think, 2017. At the moment, within the fintech area, you have a very deregulated area. So fintechs they can offer services, they can think whatever they want to do. And with this new Payment Service Directive, there comes a lot more regulation when it comes about data privacy, about holding of data. And especially what we have in Euro is always the questions with these safe harbor agreements. Is this data stored in Europe? Is this data stored in the US? And for example, what I mentioned before, this Austrian company who said, okay, we have a new concrete methodology, calculation mechanism where we can give you a forecast of your bank account balance for the next 3 months, and you can simulate what happens if I have less salary, if I have more salary, if I want to do this. And now imagine that some external company gets access to your private bank account data. Yeah? So this is where it comes to security and where these fintechs have to come to the banks and offer them their their technology as a service, which later on is integrated within the banks. And this is where we are doing this from time to time, is especially when it comes to the e-banking channels, when it goes to the front ends where customer hand over payments, and then you have to have the security that whatever has given by the customer to the bank follows all the compliance regulation when it comes to the back end and goes to the clearing. And there we have this topic where we have this integration.
Looks like we're fine.
Fine. Then thank
Perfect.
you very much.
Thanks a lot, Werner. So I got a little bit of information. Right now it's going to be a coffee break. So we will be able to talk to all the speakers in person with the coffee. And we will need to leave this room because there's going to be a transformation again. Because the next speaker is going to be a keynote for this for the whole room. And small announcement in Russian. Я хочу напомнить, что у нас будет после кофе-брейка будет розыгрыш призов от agile. Вот. Всем спасибо. Thank you all.